and Plant Profits is brought to you by Produce Global. Um, Look, my next guest, I'm very excited to have this chat with him. He's done a lot, and not so long of a period of time. He's done it very quickly. He spent the last 10 years working in the regulated consumer products market, which we're going to get into that. I'm just really curious about why he chose that direction. And the last 5 years, he's been in recreational cannabis, and he's grown a small startup into a cannabis brand house expected to sell more than $70 million in consumer products, cannabis related products in 2021. That's right now. I want you all to welcome to our show, to Plant Profits, Mr. Colin Landforce. He is the CTO, or Chief Technology Officer at Unrivaled Brands. Colin, how are you, man?
I'm doing so well. Thanks a ton for having me, Vern.
My pleasure, our pleasure. We've been looking forward to this day to chat with you and really kind of dive into your journey, man, and to really kind of understand the steps you took personally, professionally, to get to where you are now at Unrivaled. And I think that'll be a nice chat, nice conversation for everybody to take part in. So kind of tell me, man, where did it all start for you? Where did you grow up? Or you're up there in the Pacific Northwest? Is that where it all happened?
Yes, absolutely. West Coast, best coast, as they say.
Some
I'm
say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, a lot do, to be fair. Okay. I'm based in Portland. I grew up
Okay.
about 90 miles south. If anybody's familiar with Pac-12 football or
Yeah.
basketball, Oregon State. I grew up
Yeah.
in Corvallis. So,
So you grew
um,
up in Corvallis.
yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Go Beavs. That's not a very popular thing to say. The popular team out here is the Ducks, which is about 45 minutes south, and we're heavily at odds with those folks.
Hey, wait a minute. There's some kind of war. What is the name of that game? What's it
Well,
called?
it's called the Civil War,
Yeah.
which has been hotly contested in recent years.
Yeah.
We're in it's bizarre. We're in the grass seed capital of the world over here. So there's been
Yeah.
talk of renaming it the Turf War, which I think is pretty fantastic. But yeah.
That's great. So you actually grew up in the town where Oregon State is.
Yeah, absolutely. My mom and dad both went to Oregon State, and I
Okay.
spent way too much time there. I was a townie in college. I went to
Okay.
college there as well, and then
Yeah.
came up to the big city, as they say, in Portland.
Yeah, just 90 minutes north.
Yep.
Uh no, that's cool, man. So and so it was just preordained that you would end up going to Oregon State. I mean, that's all you saw, that's all you knew. You were a brainwashed kid, or did you look at other places? I mean, what were your interests at the time? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think there's an ex-girlfriend involved in this story. I was
That's always is, man.
yeah, I was actually going to go to Northern Arizona, and
Uh-huh.
then things change, plans change on that front,
Uh-huh.
and OSU's in the backyard, so kind of fell into my lap. And from a even at that point, coming out of high school, I was pretty heavily. I was doing entrepreneurial activity in
Okay.
Corvallis, and
Okay.
so it just kind of folded into the college version of that, and then ultimately grew out of that. I think a lot of people share the common story of DJ, promoter, party
Yeah.
thrower, entrepreneur, and
Yeah.
that was definitely the
That
the
was
start of
you?
my journey as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so you were DJing in high school, doing everything?
Yep. The origin story. I haven't got a chance to talk about this on any pods, but
But now you have it, brother.
yeah, the origin story is our high school canceled dances, and we were like, well, somebody's got to do this, and we started throwing parties, and the rest is history.
There you go.
Yeah.
I love it. No, that's great. That's amazing. So what about you, or what about your surroundings growing up? What about your parents? What were the influencers in your life that made you? I mean, you're just an entrepreneur. I mean, that's who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad is part of, you mentioned regulated consumer goods.
Yeah.
So the family business for a while was skincare and cosmetics. My dad is
Yeah.
the president and CEO of a national organic skincare company until recently, actually.
Okay.
So I was definitely around business
Okay.
from the start. He always tells me he has no idea where the entrepreneurial bug came from, though, because he didn't have that. He was he did not
Big
have.
company. He wanted the
Yeah,
corporate life,
yeah,
and you
exactly.
so non-corporate.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
Something I say on Twitter a lot is builders build. I think it's like we talk
Hmm.
about passion a lot in
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. I
Yeah.
don't have particular passions besides making things, building
Yeah.
things. And so
Yeah.
here we are, right?
There you are, man. Any siblings come along with the ride?
I got a little brother.
Uh-huh.
He's a handful. But yeah, that's it.
That's great. But now you got a family.
Yeah, got a 2-year-old. She'll be 2 in 3 weeks here. It's the
Do
best
you
thing
get a
ever.
chance to see her? Do you get a chance to see her?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I had to leave her about a half hour early this morning to come do this because my wife's out of town, so I had to do some swapping around. But absolutely, she's everything. I like to make things and hang out with my kid.
No, that's great. That is awesome. The beauty of curiosity, man. It's what makes the world go round for sure. And let's talk about some of the things that really got you going early in your career. Now, I mean, when I look at it, did you come out of school and you, or did you create the business that you went into out of school, in school? How did that work?
Yeah. So I think that like a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
I would categorize myself as a serial entrepreneur. And for a long time, I didn't have a place to put that energy. Right. So I
Yeah.
turned into a marketing and growth consultant professionally. Right.
Okay.
So when you don't have your own thing to build, you're helping other people build theirs. And so I was always working on side projects, but then after college, pretty quickly, I'm doing marketing. And then,
Mm-hmm.
like you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
kind of happenstance wound up doing a lot of stuff in these kind of weird fringe industries. So
Okay.
skincare and cosmetics, obviously I had a relationship there that had me doing a lot of work in that realm.
Right.
I ended up working with firearms. I
Yeah.
ended up working with drones, and all these
Why?
things have
Why?
like,
Why?
I,
Why,
it just
Colin?
happened. I mean, I could
Uh-huh.
also put Adidas and Red Bull on the resume.
Right. Yeah.
I think for my story, the regulated the fringe consumer goods lines up much more with what I ended up doing and what we're here today talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the experience is there when you're doing these products, you can't take normal channels, right? Like
Okay. That's
advertising
right.
is restricted,
That's right.
everything about it. And so, as weird as it is to say, FDA regs around cosmetics are similar. Not similar is maybe not the word, but there's a lot in common with what we deal with compliance on cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
Same can be said for those other industries with drones, so on and so forth. There's a lot more red tape than if we're
Mm-hmm.
selling widgets or a lot of other businesses.
Yeah, Colin, did you find that those restrictions stimulated you to the
Yeah,
point it created a challenge, a wall you had to get over through to make sure that consumers understood the product?
yeah, absolutely. There's a playbook
Mm-hmm.
really for doing a lot of products and services and marketing them and growing them. And when out of the gate, your foundation is great. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You get creative very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. And but you take Adidas, right? Or Red Bull. There's always some issues around stimulants, but you take Adidas. That's just a global brand, or that that you got involved with, or you know, what did you like it, or was it too big, or was it already done in your mind? What was your thoughts when you were working on a brand like that?
Yeah, I think scale presents all kinds of different opportunities. So
Okay.
the core of what I did with Adidas, I worked on their NBA Euro camp.
Okay.
I think the highlight of that was going to Euro camp. Spending a couple weeks in Italy.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. Coming back to, I love building, I love creating.
Yeah.
So all these things are different mediums, different products. I kind of love it all to a downfall. You know, I'm interested in pretty much everything. So
Yeah.
that being said, product is kind of where I come back at the end of the day. I love like tactically, you know, piecing together consumer product, the components, all the moving parts around that is really, I think, what's most interesting to me. And
No,
so
it's very good.
that could be a shoe, that could be a joint, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you're absolutely right, and that's the kind of firepower mentality and brain power that we really need in the cannabis space. We're going to take a break, and we're gonna come back and we're going to dive into some of the things that you did leading up to this, and that'll be great for the show. And look, I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits. I'm here today with Colin Landforce. Colin is the Chief Technology Officer of a great company that's gone through some changes and evolution in itself, Unrivaled Brands, and we'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. I'm Vern Davis. I am your host of Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is fueled by Produce Global. Hey, our guest today is Colin Landforce, and he's the Chief Technology Officer at a cool company that we're going to dive into here, Unrivaled Brands. Now, Colin, when I look at your background, you know, you took some steps up until the last 5 years before you got into cannabis, right? You had your the Landforce media business, right? And you did that, and that's when it looks like you got into the NBA Eurocamp and did some of that branding with Adidas, etc. Then how did you get into 3D robotics? Tell me about that, and what you got out of that, and why did you move to that?
Yeah, consumer electronics is a
Okay.
crazy space. So it all kind of ties into that, right? I was doing growth and marketing for
Okay.
several brands. One of them at that time happened to be 3D robotics,
Okay.
through a long time relationship. And part of my evolution was, you know, I go from touching 10 things at a time, managing clients, to say, hey, let's just go buckle down and focus and do that. So 3D robotics actually just recently sold, and has long since pivoted into enterprise autonomous flight. So
Mm-hmm.
totally different space. And this time, 3D Robotics was a DIY drone company, so
Okay.
parts and kits to build your own drones.
Yeah.
And we created a consumer electronics, like a drone you'd go buy at Best Buy.
Yeah.
If anybody's familiar with drones, you've probably seen the white DJI Phantoms. Like it's the DJI Phantom is like synonymous for drone in a lot of people's minds. And so we had a product called Solo, and we were going after DJI, who's the Chinese superpower in the space. They're really the Apple in the space.
Okay.
So we took that company from being really a DIY, you know, sold in 25 hobby shops, to
Mm-hmm.
great, launch it into Best Buys and Ralph's and 2,200-ish retailers globally.
Wow.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And then at some point there, how did cannabis come into being as an opportunity to you?
Yeah. Well, being on the West Coast, you know, I think
Yeah.
cannabis, both Oregon and California, was decriminalized 24, don't quote me, 24 years ago, 25 years ago at this point. So I've been around, as a high schooler, I've been around
Yeah.
cannabis like a lot of folks, but
Yeah.
then was around it more in depth after that as well, right? We have medical programs
Okay.
around. I had a small medical grow, just around
Mm-hmm.
it in general a lot. And then I think when I first started dabbling, you know, 5 years ago in terms of consumer packaged goods and really professionally, I had this moment when I was in a lab, and Jack Herrera is my favorite strain.
Okay.
I love Jack. I love hazes. I really love the terps on a lot of sativa, classic sativa strains. And so I'm in a
Yeah.
lab. We're looking at extracts and shatters, and the guy hands me this little tiny vial.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, here, these are the terps extracted from some Jack. And obviously I've always been, you know, weed smells amazing. I open
Mm-hmm.
this vial, and it is like you get slapped in the face with Jack Herrera. and we're talking like a couple of droplets of a clear compound in this vial, and it was just like a light bulb. It was like, holy smokes, like I don't know, it was definitely like a light bulb going off moment, just for like how incredible everything going on in the plant and in the flower and in the product is. That in that moment, it definitely transformed from weed to,
Yeah.
whoa, there's a lot going on here and a lot to explore. And so from there onward, and like I said, it very quickly moved into consumer packaged goods, which I think largely is the future of the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Now, and so you got involved with, I guess initially, with, without any, really other interesting way of presenting it, a distributor.
Right. So the origin story is we built a network with flour, like bulk
Okay.
flour, right?
Okay.
Flipping packs,
Mm-hmm.
as one would say.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was always do products. And so we built the network with flour that was easily accessible, that didn't have any manufacturing involved, knowing
Right.
that if we had a network of friends that we're selling to, we can then go and create products and backfill into that.
Right.
And so the first and most obvious one was a joint. I think there's a couple of reasons behind that. One is it's a simple product to
Mm-hmm.
execute. The other is, especially 4 or 5 years ago at this point, you go into a store, you buy a joint, it's a total coin toss if it's going to be decent and smokable, right? Um,
That is true. That
right.
is
And
absolutely.
so we started there, and we took a very systematic approach to it. We imported a hop milling machine from Germany. This
Okay.
allows us to dial in particle size, and right out of the gate, we're A/B testing particle size with density,
Mm-hmm.
and using some of the typical tools for these things, but really taking it far above and beyond. I think a core tenet for us product wise is consistency.
Okay.
And so if you're going to make a consistent joint that smokes the same, whether you buy it in Portland or
Mm-hmm.
whether you buy it in Central Oregon or whether you buy it in
Mm-hmm.
San Diego, then you got to have things like the particle size have to be the same every time, and the density
Mm-hmm.
of the pack has to be the same every time. And so that was the beginning of the consumer packaged goods journey for us. And
Yeah. Well,
when
that's one of the first tenets of a brand.
yeah,
It's got to be
absolutely.
the same. It has to
Yeah.
have an identity. It's got to be, you have to be able as a consumer depend on it to be the same.
Yep. And in cannabis, that's super fragmented right now. I was just
Uh,
recently talking with
yeah.
somebody who's somebody related to an Oregon licensee for a Colorado brand, and they were pointing out that they're not even doing the same type of extraction in Oregon as they do in Colorado, where the brand started, which is, we can get away with these kinds of things in a early,
Yeah.
very,
Pre-legal state. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
national,
exactly.
where there's not that much intrusion into the business from standard consumer product goods companies.
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And in an immature industry, I think you can get
Yeah.
away with it. A
Yeah.
lot of backyard science
Yeah.
still flies, but particularly has flown in the past. And going forward, it's all, we're not making much up, right? It's consumer packaged goods, and like
Yeah.
you said, the core of that is consistency for the consumer.
It is the core. Does that frustrate you that people are some companies are dragging their feet and they're just trying to collect the cash instead of build an industry?
Um, I think I think that it's really just a hallmark of an immature industry here. I'm not sure that frustrates me. I think it presents an opportunity. There's so many moving parts in
Mhm.
this, and I think that there's been a lot of business done that way. In the big picture, business will not be done that way. If you go to the grocery store uh, and you're buying a box of Cheez-Its, it's probably a consistent product, and so that kind of stuff will weed itself out. Will weed itself out eventually, pretty organically, I think.
Mhm. So we were talking about big brands. Do you see that happening in the cannabis arena?
Yeah.
Of really having brands that consumers can depend on, that they know, you know, and that they can find it.
Right. I think we're at the very beginnings
Okay.
of that. It's going to be hard until there's federal legalization,
Yeah.
because consumers in so many states are pretty much presented with the options that are made available to them. I'm far from an expert on state regs, but if you're talking about a state like Florida, where there's only so many licenses, the consumers there have like X amount of options and that's it,
Yeah.
so they don't even have an opportunity to, if there is that brand that is consistent across the whole country, except for in Florida, they don't even have the opportunity to buy it. So I think the very beginnings of it are happening. Cookies is a really good example of it, right? Cookies is, I don't know by the numbers, but if you can buy knockoff cookies in New York City, that probably is an indicator that there's a super strong national brand there. And I think that there are a few cases like that at this point in the industry.
Yeah, that's a great example. Hey, we're going to take a break. I'm going to come back with Colin Landforce, and we're going to talk about Unrivaled. I'm Vern Davis, and I'm your host of Plant Profits, and Plant Profits is fueled by Produce Global. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back. I'm Vern Davis. I'm your host of Plant Profits. And my guest today is Colin Landforce. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Unrivaled Brands. So how was Unrivaled born? Tell me the story.
Yeah, it's a complicated one. So as of the beginning of July, we've closed on a merger with TerraTech, which makes us a public company. So the ticker is UNRV. And that is really
nice.
Yeah, thank you. That is really the I guess in a lot of ways the beginning of the next chapter, but the close of several. So to this point, we've done a few rounds of M&A. I'm part of the core coming out of Oregon, like we discussed about 2 years ago. We brought that together with a team from a brand called Corova in California. And so it all began with us as the Oregon seed, Corova as the California seed. And that was, for my part of that story 5 years ago. Corova goes back a little bit further than that. And these pieces have been coming together for years now. And like I said, culminates in the merger last week, which puts us on the public arena, gives us cultivation in California, more retail in California, and is far from the finish line, more so just the beginning.
Yeah. What are you guys in 3 states now?
Yeah. So we have licensees in Arizona and Oklahoma. And then we are active in Oregon, California, and Nevada. Nevada is a partnership. So we're not on the ground operating in Nevada. In Oregon and California, so we have distro and light manufacturing in Portland. We have distro in Northern California. We have distro and light manufacturing assembly in Southern California, and then retail in Southern California and Northern California.
Yeah. So your retail shops, are they all going to be called The Spot?
That is to be determined. Probably something I shouldn't comment on.
Let's not do that then.
Yep.
Let's keep you in.
Chop. Yeah.
Okay. All right. But retail is part of the future.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I'm super interested in direct to consumer. So we just recently announced that we're acquiring Silver Streak, that is a large delivery platform in Sacramento. I'm really excited about that. Obviously, e-commerce is trending that way in general over several years, and I'm excited about the DTC future of cannabis. But I think that brick and mortar retail is a huge part of cannabis for years and years to come, especially as education and is such a massive part of the buying decision and the consumer experience, which it will be, like I said, for years to come. I don't see that changing.
Yeah. Well, as a consumer, I'm going to, look to buy, some cannabis. And what do you believe? And I always ask people is, what is the experience you want me to have in your outlet?
Yeah.
In your dispensary.
I think education is the core, right? I think that from a retention standpoint, right? If the consumer feels like they can come into a store and get their questions answered and they can get helped by somebody that's knowledgeable, they're probably going to come back. So like I said, from a marketing and customer retention standpoint, that is the biggest piece of it. Is being what's the word I'm looking for? uh, guru is not it, but
Hmm.
being knowledgeable helper,
Hmm.
right? If you get more into the weeds, we're looking at upsells, cross sells, right? If you come
Hmm.
in and you're looking for a flower from brand X, how do we add a pre-roll to it? That
Hmm.
type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that, if you look at some of the other regulated industries, it would, and I don't know what it'll take to make this happen more frequently or ever. And that is, the wine industry and the spirits industry has done some really cool things from an education perspective, right? So you walk into the dispensary and, the folks that make Cabana and Sticks, right, are there, and
Yep.
they're talking about it and they're telling you all about it and they're comparing it to other products in the store and doing those kinds of educational things on an ongoing basis. I think as a consumer, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to see in recent years, like the
Yeah.
development of those alcohol brands has gotten so interesting.
Uh-huh.
I see Barefoot Wine at 5Ks doing pop-ups
Yeah.
at runs, which is like seems like an awkward fit, but
Yeah.
it's working. And then you've got the whole wave of the White Claws and the
Yeah.
sparkling cider or sparkling
Yeah.
water alcohol. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure what that category is technically called, but I think that there's a lot of similarities with booze. They only go so far, but then when you get into the nooks and crannies of all the different spaces, it's
Yeah.
really, you've got microbrew is synonymous with craft brands. I don't know. It holds water.
Yeah. No, it really does. And so what are some of the brands? I just mentioned Sticks, and Cabana, and I think you got a brand called Buku. And so yeah, talk to me about some of the brands and what you plan to do to make them household names.
Yeah. So Corova is the 800-pound gorilla for us.
Yeah.
I think last year was top 10 in California. And last year was its first real year in Oregon, and it's now taken Oregon by storm. So
Okay.
Corova is a big focus point for us.
Okay.
Uh, and then you just mentioned a couple of the others.
Hmm.
Sticks is a value brand. In my head, it's very, very synonymous with like a Bud Light.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
there's no confusion that if you buy a jar of Sticks flower, you're not expecting super premium indoor cannabis. The tagline is good weed. You're expecting good weed.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty straightforward. And then Cabana I align with like a Veuve Clicquot. I'm
Okay.
really going all in on the alcohol comparisons here, but
Yeah, that's
I've been
okay.
thinking,
I
yeah,
steered you there.
yep,
The
yep, yep.
consumers like that. Yeah.
I've been thinking about the brands these ways for years. So Cabana is baby blue. The mark is a flamingo.
Hmm.
It's light and it's really built on really interesting strains.
Okay.
I think a lot of brands or companies in the space is like everything going into it as a commodity, and it's a matter of slapping a logo on it. And
Yeah.
and we try and sprint away from that as much as possible, for both for the consumer experience as well as to establish actual brands that
Yeah.
actually matter in the eye of the consumer.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
this Cabana group that's your boutique products.
Yeah, and really like there's a little bit of fragmentation between the state markets on Cabana, which is one of the challenges in this.
Okay.
Um, but super high and Corova is very high end, but Cabana is more like it's the right strains. We think about it like it's food strains. It's stuff with really flavorful terps.
Okay.
Um, and then Corova is built on 1,000 milligram black bar, right? So an
Mhm.
edible that doubles as a horse tranquilizer. And
Yeah,
that's a joke.
Corova,
Yeah,
you got to be
yeah,
careful.
yeah. That's a bad joke. I should probably stop telling. But
You-
with recreational in California, all of a sudden, of course, you can't do that anymore. So that
right.
spurred that brand went from edible to okay into flower, into vape, into pre-roll,
Yeah.
and everything in between.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. So, how would you want to leave us, Colin? And what would you like to say about Unrivaled as we sign off here?
I think the core tenet for as it concerns the consumer, it's consistency, and so I think that's both what you can expect and what you should should be looking for when you're buying cannabis today, next year, and beyond.
Yeah.
And besides that, look for Corova, look for sticks, look for the brands. If you're on our website, there's a dealer map where you can find them. And I'm excited about bridging the gap with consumers from understanding weed, being excited about federal legalization, to
Right.
going into stores and finding a brand that they want and a product that they want.
No, absolutely. That's where we're headed. That's where we need to go. Colin Landforce, thank you very much. Colin Landforce is the Chief Technology Officer at Unrivaled Brands, and he was our guest today. And really, man, appreciate you coming on board and sharing with us. And I love your journey. Definitely love it. I could see you probably started being an entrepreneur somewhere when you were 4 or 5 years old. People just don't know. Right.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us. You
Thank
can download episodes of Plant Profits by going to cannabisradio.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, iHeart, anywhere you listen to your podcast. Find Plant Profits. We are there. Thank you very much. Follow Produce Global on LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, all of the platforms of social media. We are there. And really take a look at how we're building companies and how we're changing people's lives at produceglobal.com. That's PROTIS global.com. Until next time, everyone, cheers.